Gambling mania takes over the Brady household when Bobby and Greg have a chin-up contest. The loser has to do the winner's bidding for a whole week, and the unexpected winner lets the power go to his head. In a side bet, Carol thinks she can guess the identity of Mike's high school crush, Bobo. Battle of the Network shows. Join Rick Brooks and Mike Kogel as they explore the TV of the 70s and 80s through hand-picked episodes of their favorite and not-so-favorite series.
Welcome to Season 8 of Battle of the Network shows from our new annex, Battle of the Network shows annex.
Yes, our westernmost location.
That's right.
Nice supplement to the Battle of the Network shows empire, I think.
Following dubious American tradition of expanding ever west.
Yes. Or maybe this is like when Johnny Carson moved The Tonight Show from New York to Burbank. You know, he moved way out west.
Yeah.
And I think it had pretty good results.
In this case, it did.
Yeah.
Anyway, I'm Mike.
And I'm Rick. Hello, everybody.
And it's taken 8 seasons for reasons we might get into, but we're finally discussing a show that probably anyone in our age bracket knows.
Mm-hmm.
And certainly, I'm sure our 2 to 11-year-old demographic loves.
Of course. I certainly would have been willing to discuss this show many seasons ago.
I might have had some resistance, partly because I mistakenly thought it was more of a 60s show.
I think that's legitimate, actually, and I think this is kind of indicative of something. I think there's many shows kind of in that early 70s period that we may know more from reruns, but don't necessarily feel like a 70s show in the same way as, say, Love Boat does or something like that. It just almost feels like an actual different era to me. While the Brady Bunch does seem like almost a show from an earlier era, it's also somehow a show that I think of when I think of the 1970s, but it's an interesting case in that it actually started in 1969, and you could kind of go both ways with it, but also it was a ubiquitous presence in reruns when we were growing up. So kind of, I think a lot of times our sweet spot is maybe more 1975 to 1985. This show aired before that era, but in reruns it was certainly all over the place, kind of in our sweet spot.
Right, yeah. You know, it is that thing where the way we identify a decade doesn't just magically happen as soon as the new decade starts.
Right.
So the 60s bled into the early 70s, and the 50s bled into the early, the Kennedy era 60s is more the tail end of the 50s then, or the transition from one to the other then.
Right. And I think one thing about the Brady Bunch is it seems to be at least maybe a good 2 or 3 years behind the times. So at the beginning, it almost seems to be like a relic of even earlier era of the 60s. Right. And then by the time you get to the end, it seems like they're relying heavily on things, fashions even that you might associate with like the late 60s or earlier than it actually was. You know, some of the language and some of the things they get into. So
yeah, but I'm going to try to get all my sort of negativity out here in the beginning.
Okay, let's do that. Let's cleanse a little bit and then give it an objective discussion afterwards.
I definitely thought. I mean, I generally don't want to be negative on the show as much as possible, other than calling certain things terrible. But
other than that, okay.
But I also I don't want to be a stick in the mud here, and I don't want to be a negative Nelly, and I don't want to harsh anybody's mellow.
Okay.
But my sort of general feeling when I think about the Brady Bunch is very similar to what I mentioned back when we talked about game shows.
Uh-oh.
Which is a sense of, not nostalgia, but of all the time I wasted watching this show as a kid.
Huh.
Because I know I watched it a lot, and it was mostly in the afternoons when I could have been out doing something.
Right.
And I was just sitting around watching this show that I don't think I really even, enjoyed that much. So I didn't necessarily feel like if I watched it for the podcast, that even though it had a purpose, I might, that might be sort of what it stirred up, that sort of like, I should really be doing something
interesting
else.
You feel remorse from watching it.
Watching it too much.
Really?
And this is the other thing that maybe indicts the show a little bit. My memory of anything specific about it, of specific episodes, is pretty limited. The look of it, which is another thing we'll get into, I'm sure, and the sort of hair transitions and kids getting older and other things. But then it's like, specific details. I don't know if I remember them from them being in like the movie and parodied on Saturday Night Live more than actually seeing the episode, especially like the Marcia getting hit in the face with the football. Mm-hmm. Like I thought even maybe the idea of Jan being all insecure was like an exaggerated thing. And then I was just reading episode descriptions. And every season there's at least 2 episodes that essentially are Jan's insecure about something.
Yeah.
So that was at least interesting, but it's like, what do I really remember? And I think not a whole lot.
Huh. I'd like to know what our listeners think about this show, because this could divide people. But the way I think of the show is of a show that so many people have seen so many times. I almost think it's the opposite with many people, that they remember so many episodes and maybe blend them together a little bit. But I think one of the reasons the Brady Bunch movie worked so well, and I do think that was one of the best big screen adaptations of a classic TV show that was ever made.
Yeah.
I think one of the reasons it worked so well was because people remembered so many of those moments from watching the original episode. And I think there was some exaggeration, but as I've gone back and watched some more episodes, it's surprising almost how much it almost was spot on, just taken from the movie that they built from it. I guess I'd forgotten maybe that you'd watch it as much as you say you did now.
It was, a TBS stable.
Yeah.
Staple or both of those.
It was
in the TBS stable as a staple.
Yeah. Bill Tush was often the leader of the TBS stable.
Yes.
He'd often ride herd over
right.
the whole team of, Craig Sager.
Uh-huh.
The Brady Bunch.
Andy
Griffith.
Leave It to Beaver.
Yeah.
So, speaking of Leave It to Beaver, if I were to choose a family-type sitcom that ran at reruns a lot to watch now, I would probably choose that first over Brady Bunch. So I feel like it might be funnier more often.
It would be hard for me to pick because I didn't really watch Leave It to Beaver growing up, and it's only, I didn't watch it much, and I've come to appreciate it more and think that it's much better than its reputation as I watch it now. So I would pick Leave It to Beaver just because I've seen like all these Brady Bunch episodes multiple times.
Yeah.
But Brady Bunch does have a certain reputation. It's hard for me to say whether I like it because it's a quote-unquote good show or if I like it because I've seen it before. And we did a bonus episode a while back, a catching up episode, and we talked about things that we had watched sort of as comfort food. And I didn't mention Brady Bunch, but partly in preparation for this, I kind of started doing a big dive into Brady Bunch. So I have been watching a lot of it, and it's easy to watch. Part of it is, the nostalgia. That's probably a big part of it. And like there's TGIF shows that we may be deliberately avoiding that would be technically eligible for our podcast.
Right.
If I were to go back and watch those, I don't think I'd be able to tolerate them because I didn't watch them growing up and I don't really care for them.
Yeah.
Maybe it would be different if I hadn't seen all these in reruns so many times, but the fact is I did watch them a lot. I enjoyed them as a kid, and then I remembered watching them with my sisters as and it was kind of a family thing watching them in reruns. And I think it was something like my mother would enjoy them because she had seen them before. And we'd sort of, there's a certain irony watching it, but we did sort of laugh at it and as well as with it. And it's kind of hard to explain. I think sometimes it's legitimately funny. As we can get into, I think the show changed significantly during its run and went from something that was a little bit more mockable as opposed to like a more conventional, maybe not groundbreaking, but reasonably decent family sitcom for what it was trying to do. But overall, I have fond memories of it. I did watch it a ton. And like you said, it was just on. Unlike, there's some other reruns, especially like black and white reruns that I maybe associate with like Nick at Night or something like that. Or we've talked before about like The Honeymooners just being on at night. Brady Bunch, when Nick at Night would show it, it just seems weird it being on at night. To me, it's like a classic morning or daytime show, like especially like afternoons from school or maybe like late mornings or something like that. It's odd for me to think of it as a primetime show for some reason.
When I watched the E! True Hollywood Story last night, they made a big deal about how the woman who was running Nick at Night made it the cornerstone of Nick at Night in the late 90s, I guess.
Yeah.
And she had grown up with it, so.
Right.
So it was something she wanted to do. But that might have been some corporate synergy there, too.
Yeah, and I think it might have been a little faddish because the movie was coming out. And it seems like every 10 years there's a big resurgence of Brady Bunch mania. Like right now there was earlier this year.
Oh, The House.
But to that I would say like MeTV I think shows Brady Bunch right now. But it's more like a Saturday, I think it's more of a weekend afternoon thing. I mean, it seems like it's been a long time since any of these classic TV networks or subchannels made Brady Bunch an actual cornerstone of their lineup. So while I'm not necessarily disputing what she was saying, at the time is probably true. I'm not sure how long that lasted. It seems like, I'm not sure Brady Bunch is a show that adults, as much as they might love it, I'm not sure if they'll sit down and watch it over and over again, because as opposed to something like Andy Griffith is on, or MASH, they're on all the time, all over the schedule, all over the daytime, whereas Brady Bunch seems to be a little bit more limited in its appeal.
attention hog. You're being a very Jan Brady cat right now.
Yes. I think the cat is trying to get some attention, maybe.
Should we talk about the look of it? Because it might be the last sort of negative thing.
Okay, yeah.
Which is, I know specific listeners we have, a lot of people like the look of it. Mm-hmm. Like the house is, I want that house.
Right.
You know, and that show where they rebuilt the house was all exciting to people. And
right, precisely because they were recreating that exact look.
Yeah, and it doesn't appeal to me.
Yeah, what about it? The colors, does it seem fake?
The colors, especially the kitchen. Like, I mean, the kitchen looks like a nice kitchen.
Yeah.
Like, even now, that would probably be a nice kitchen.
Yeah.
The 2 ovens and all that.
Right.
Tons of space and all that. But the orange.
Right.
Like, that's the worst color.
Well,
and there are other colors that were popular in that period that in isolation, I'm fine. I like brown.
Yeah.
And yet, I think in this episode, Carol's wearing a brown thing, that something in the midst of all the greens and the oranges and stuff, it just like, I don't like it. And her hairdo is awful.
Wow. Whoa. We got away from I thought we were talking about the look of the show and the set.
Yeah. I like the stairs.
Okay.
They seem a little dangerous, but they're cool.
Right.
The wood paneling, like that seems like an architect would not have a house full of wood paneling. Wood paneling's cheap.
Right. And he did verify that it has been verified that he actually did design that house.
Yeah.
So he's responsible for everything in it.
He must not have been a successful architect.
Well, Mr. Phillips keeps him running. You know, he has been sent to Hawaii and so the company must think a lot of him for them to send him all over the country, to Cincinnati, to the Kings Island Park, and
that plum Cincinnati.
Yes.
Maybe there was wood paneling that was nice in our house, and maybe this is another thing. Like, our house was not that was more traditional house. Mm-hmm. So, and there were houses kind of their own style, more like that, maybe not interior, but the exterior in our town. But other than shag carpeting, we didn't have a lot of sort of 70s or late 60s things like that.
Right.
The only wood paneling we had was in my dad's little office in the basement.
Right.
And it was not good stuff at all.
It seems like that's where wood paneling belonged, like in a den, you know, isolated to like one like small room that the dad can retreat to.
And Brady's got it all over the place.
Yeah. Yeah.
Bedrooms, the parts of the living room.
Well,
it's I don't know. It's just, you know, how something makes you feel. I'm not judging anyone for liking it.
Yeah.
And I think, like, I don't want to speak for him, but I think friend of the show Dan likes that. But he is a little bit older, so he would have been watching this
right when
it was on.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. Do people like it because they generally like that aesthetic, or do they like it because they remember watching it when they were growing up and it makes them, or it makes them remember that specific time?
Yeah.
Maybe out of context, yeah, it's not so great, but...
Right, and, you know, in a lot of the clothes, it's the same thing.
Yeah. I think the color scheme is definitely something that stands out, but I'll tell you what I like. I like their big living room area.
It is nice, especially when in that one episode where they were practicing the square dance and they moved all the furniture.
Yeah.
I was like, that's a big room.
I actually think that they underutilize that. It's a really nice open floor plan, and it seems like a lot of the episodes they wind up kind of using that family room on the same level more, or even Mike's den.
Right.
But it doesn't seem like they do as much entertaining as they should.
Yeah.
It's like a big open space. Sometimes you can see they've got a TV in the foreground there that's off camera usually.
So downstairs they have that room, which has double doors too. I do like that, the double doors that come in it.
Right.
And they've got the den you mentioned, or the living room, whatever, that TV room. I don't know what room that is.
I would call it like the family room, the one that leads out to the backyard.
Yeah, and has
the driveway and everything.
Table and they watch TV in there.
Right.
And they have Mike's office or whatever.
Right.
Study, den, and the kitchen.
Mm-hmm. And Alice's bedroom is off the kitchen, and apparently there's a laundry room downstairs too.
Okay. And then upstairs they have 3 bedrooms and...
Yes, they have the master bedroom. The kids have like the Jack and Jill bathroom connecting them.
Yeah.
And of course, Mike's biggest failing is one bathroom for 6 kids. Because the Mike and Carol have their own bathroom.
Yeah.
And Alice, I guess there's a bathroom down on the main level too.
But apparently the kids never use that. I guess it's just Alice's bathroom.
Yeah.
I could see her being like a control freak about that.
Well, she's got her own little corner of the household, and I guess she might as well be protective of it because it's not like she has much of a life otherwise.
I guess if maybe he just wasn't, you know, if it's his own house and he designed it, he didn't get a commission on it.
Right.
Maybe there just wasn't money for another half bath.
Well, the other thing that's weird is like towards the end of the show's run, Greg gets the attic upstairs. They clean out the attic, and after really never seeing the attic before, you see, wow, they got a ton of room up here. And it makes you wonder why they didn't turn that into another bedroom before.
Right.
And Greg actually has a sink up there. And as I'm watching the 5th season episodes, I'm trying to speculate on whether there's a hidden toilet area up there too. But he definitely has a sink. So there's a lot more space in that house than you think. It's one of those things that's much bigger on the inside than it is on the outside.
I would definitely, my estimation of the show or the house would go way up if they revealed like he had like a toilet that folded into something.
A Murphy toilet?
Yes, a Murphy toilet. The famous Murphy toilet.
Yeah.
Nothing worse than getting folded up in a Murphy toilet.
No, that's very embarrassing.
I saw a description of an earlier season episode where he like takes over the den.
Greg does? Yeah.
To be his own room or something.
Right.
But in the pilot, where they live in a different house, he actually has his own room. Mm-hmm. Because when they come to pick up the kids to take them on the honeymoon, he wanders in from the hallway into Bobby and Peter's room.
Wow. So it's a big adjustment for Greg.
He's got to go back with these goobers.
Yeah. And that's 3 kids living in a room. It can be tough. They're not huge rooms. They got bunk beds and the boys' room.
Yeah.
It's tough. But, I guess a lot of people feel nostalgia because maybe not for the house itself, but because of the idea of the family living in there and how the family behaves. And I think that's a big part of the show's appeal. Yeah. But you're kind of hating on it sounds like.
I just needed to get that out.
Yeah.
Again, I'm not judging anyone. And in fact, I think, the show's fairly reasonably successful at what it's trying to do.
Yeah. And I think it's important to point out that the Brady Bunch is a cultural icon, maybe one of the biggest quote-unquote iconic shows of its era, yet it was never that popular in its time. Right. And people spend a lot of energy trying to figure out, what its enduring appeal is and what happened to it. But as you go back, it's interesting that on ABC, it was never a big or even a moderate, I guess maybe you could call it a moderate ratings hit among like a younger demographic, which wasn't as important then. But it wasn't like even a top 30 show, which is amazing to me. Yeah. And actually, the Partridge Family kind of came along and was a much bigger hit, ratings-wise. Yet somehow in the pop in the culture, Brady Bunch went into reruns and syndication, was everywhere. Whereas Partridge Family, it has its place, but has nowhere near the cachet that Brady Bunch does.
Yeah, it's the magic of Sherwood Schwartz.
I guess so. Yeah.
He doesn't know how to make something people like at the time, or maybe even like ever.
Yeah.
But somehow they watch it and they hold on.
That is one of the most backhandedest of compliments we've ever issued on this podcast.
And speaking of him, I would definitely watch Gilligan's Island before.
Really?
Brady Bunch.
That's interesting.
Because I think it's having seen a couple episodes recently, it's funnier.
It's hard. It's interesting because Gilligan's Island, on one hand, they're much more limited as far as their formula because they're basically getting off the island and Gilligan does something dumb. But I think you have something there, like the writing in the show is a little sharper. I think it's funny you mentioned that because the writer of the episode we're going to talk about today was one of the head writers for Gilligan's Island, Elroy Schwartz. You won't be surprised to learn that he is related to Sherwood Schwartz. He's his brother. Uh-huh. So... yeah, the episode we're going to talk about, Elroy Schwartz wrote many of the Gilligan's Island episodes. Yeah. So there was a lot of continuity. And a lot of the music, the incidental music, is almost virtually identical to that was used on Gilligan's Island. And
did DeVol do Gilligan's Island music too?
I don't think he did.
Oh, okay.
I don't think he did.
Yeah.
But I love the incidental music on the Brady Bunch, by the way. There's so many little motifs, and they show up again and again and again. I think that's another kind of comfort food aspect of it. But there's just such a variety. There's like the Danger Brady Bunch incidental theme. There's like there's like a wistful one, and I can't duplicate it, but people know like if Marcia comes home and she's got a crush on somebody, there'll be this like wistful, like gentle music that they play, like this little motif that they do. And these things show up again and again, and I love it. And of course, endless variations of the theme song.
Right. Like I do enjoy, it seems like at the beginning of an episode, usually there's like a slower sort of organ playing the melody of the theme song, like when they first, that establishing shot.
Yeah. And there's a lot of like little horn versions, like dun 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 dun. They milk it for all it's worth.
Oh yeah.
I remember a lot of these episodes. I do remember specific episodes, and
say some good things.
Yeah. Well, the other thing is like, I don't know. Should we just maybe go into the show here and And I think some other things I would like to bring up maybe will come up. But I'm kind of fascinated still by the fact that it was on Friday nights on ABC for 5 years.
Yeah.
And it was an 8 o'clock show each season except season 2 when it was on at 7:30. Interestingly, that was before the primetime access rule that gave that 7:30 to 8 hour back to local stations and kind of took it away from the networks.
Okay.
So other shows that were on Friday nights were Partridge Family, Odd Couple. Like a lot of times, Brady Bunch and Odd Couple were paired together. And do you think of those as similar shows at all?
No.
I can't imagine them being like somebody thinking that that's a good audience flow going from Brady Bunch to Odd Couple. It's amazing to me.
Like if Brady Bunch were on at 8:30 and Odd Couple at 9.
Yeah.
Then, okay.
But
the parents suffer through Brady Bunch to get to Odd Couple. And maybe a kid or two stays around for that, but, they're not going to enjoy that.
Right.
It's middle-aged men arguing.
Right.
I mean, 2 to 11-year-olds we know enjoy that because they're listening right now.
Well, and they did bring on youth-appealing guest stars like Paul Williams on The Odd Couple to bring those kids in.
Yeah, the Brady Bunch didn't get Paul Williams.
Exactly. And Room 222 and Love American Style were other Friday night shows. Yeah. But Brady Bunch and Odd Couple are probably 2 of my favorite shows, and I just can't imagine pairing them together or even think that they were on in the same era, really.
Yeah.
But
can you imagine them living in an apartment together?
I am imagining it right now, and I'm kind of enjoying it.
I would enjoy, only because it came up in an E! True Hollywood story that Sherwood Schwartz wanted to cast Gene Hackman as Mike Brady.
Yeah.
I would enjoy seeing an alternate version where someone gruff like him or Klugman played Mike Brady.
Right.
Although I could see Gene Hackman on, not that he's always gruff, but being more Lex Luthor as Mike Brady.
Right.
But they're still getting an edge because it's Gene Hackman.
Right.
Even then, I'm sure.
Mike's humor and lessons are a little more gentle, whereas Gene Hackman in that role would be a little bit more cutting with some of his words of wisdom, I think.
Right. He would be more like the original Bill Keane Family Circus, cigar smoking.
Right.
One.
More of a Gene Hackman would be more of in that early Bill Keane, I think, is more of a 50s, early 60s kind of dad, whereas Mike Brady, as played by Robert Reed, seems to be more of a 70s kind of dad.
Yeah, he's definitely a sensitive guy.
Yeah. You definitely see his evolution in terms of his hair.
Uh-huh.
Because in the pilot, you said to watch the pilot, and in our episode, he's kind of in a midway point where he's got the short hair but the sideburns, and then by the end, it's the famous Brady perm.
Which and the more I look at his hair in those stages, I think that's just his hair.
Yeah,
I think he just was this curly haired guy.
Yeah, I think so.
Especially because he kept that for the most part, the rest of his life.
Right.
So, and the boys too, I think they're just said their hair got longer. That's what it looked like.
Yeah.
I mean, maybe they did a little bit of something, but.
Well, it was kind of that thing of when you're young, your dad takes you to the barber every month or whatever, whether you need it or not.
Right.
Just because it's the thing to do. And then when you get older, you relax a little bit, maybe.
Right. And they had a family meeting where all the men decided not to go to the barber.
Yeah. Well, and that household could save a little bit of money here and there, and 6 mouths to feed, plus Alice.
Well, Carol's spending all that money on her weird hairdos. So.
Yeah. Boy, you really got it in for Florence Henderson in this era.
I like her. I just don't. I don't like. So this is the hair that I think they used in the movie. Mm-hmm. Where it's a short haircut, but then there's long hair sticking out the back.
Yeah, I think
I just want to.
When I was watching some episodes with Lori, she actually made the same comment that she was really disgruntled by her hair, especially what was going on in the back. So
yeah,
you're not alone.
Right. In terms of positive things, I had positive things to say about her.
Okay.
As an actress. So, but let's get into this.
Yeah. So the Brady Bunch, as we mentioned, it started in 1969. Went 5 seasons to 1974, 117 episodes, all of them on ABC. So when Brady Bunch began, ABC was kind of an also-ran network. I mean, and that's maybe part of the reason why Brady Bunch wasn't a huge hit, was that it was on the number 3 network. So it had that going against it. But the episode we're going to talk about is kind of in the middle of the 3rd season. Mm-hmm. It's called The Big Bet, and it aired January 28th, 1972. And just to kind of mention what else was on that night, The Brady's was followed by The Partridge Family, Room 222, Odd Couple, and Love American Style. And CBS had O'Hara, U.S. Treasury with David Jansen, one of the lesser-known Quinn Martin shows. She Waits, which was a Patty Duke TV movie, and The Don Rickles Show. So at 10:30, they had a half-hour, a Don Rickles sitcom that only lasted 6 episodes. And NBC had Sanford and Son, which was in its 1st season, and a show called Chronologue, which I think was a news public affairs type thing that seemed to go on the rest of the night, apparently. But so Sanford and Son was in its 1st season, as Brady Bunch was in its 3rd season, and that to me is kind of an interesting crossover too.
Yeah.
So one of the reasons I picked this, I think it's kind of interesting that it's a midway point, because my theory that I was kind of getting into with you was, I think the show started out as a pretty solid show, grounded in more reality. And I think it peaked in its second season. Like a lot of the good episodes, really like quality sitcom episodes are in season two. And then in season 3, it starts getting a little bit more silly. And then season 4 and season 5, the characters really are just doing dumb things, it seems like, just for like sitcom things. But I think if you think about things that you would mock the show for, it's probably going to be more in the second half of the run, whereas the first half, it's surprisingly, maybe a little inoffensive, you could say, maybe a little bland, but not as cartoonish as it would later became. And I think in season 3, you're starting to see some of that. And this episode may or may not be an example, depending on your point of view, of that kind of thing. But I think this episode still, it's believable, but you're starting to get into some of the more cliches of the Brady Bunch.
So I watched one episode from each season to see if I could get an idea of that change. And yeah, I think you're probably onto something. Although the Jan episode that I watched was season 4. And I honestly think that was a decent episode where she wants to be an only child.
Yeah.
And the kids freeze her out.
Right.
And there's the hoedown.
Well, okay, there's an example, like
which the
hoedown itself seems to me like an example of the kind of thing people sort of make fun of or point out as an unrealistic thing, that the family would do that and do it enthusiastically.
Right, yeah.
So while the episode itself has like a premise that's recognizable, there's these like things around it, like the activities that they do, like being in
the sack race.
Yeah.
Which at least in that each Hollywood story, they kept showing a still of that sack race. Like that was a big memory. And it's like, oh, okay.
Yeah.
Because they used it in the movie too. And season 5, I watched the one where they think Alice is going to elope with Sam the Butcher. I guess that was that's a little farcical.
Yeah.
Season 2, I'm kind of blanking on what I watched.
Well,
it was because it was one of the episodes I actually remember where they break the vase.
Okay, that I don't think I told you this. That happens to be one of my favorite episodes.
Okay,
that's one I considered talking about. I love that episode. Just the constant replay of the ball going into
that's the best
over and over again.
Peter's sort of film noir nightmare about the ball bouncing.
And just how
don't play ball in the house.
And just how they're trying to teach Peter a lesson, and he stubbornly insists on letting everybody else suffer for his sin. Right. I love that.
Well, and I mean the kids sort of stubbornly insist on being loyal to him.
Right.
That seems part of the problem too, is that they're almost like encouraging him. They want him to get away with.
Yeah.
Long enough so he can go camping.
Right.
Like they're on his side, but
they're willing to put up with it. They know. He's being, impossible, but they're willing to let him go on that camping trip. Right. And of course, we'd be remiss if we didn't mention why Peter it looks like he wails it and deliberately throws it out the boys' bedroom. I mean, it's one of the worst passes in the history of basketball.
He's just terrible at basketball.
I just totally don't understand that. And I love watching that every time I see it, but Mom always said, don't play ball in the house.
That's right.
So, yeah, that's good. And I really do think some of the best episodes are in season 2.
Okay.
If you were to look at it as a whole. But season 5 was when, of course, they brought in Cousin Oliver.
Right.
Who, this is going to be a controversial statement, but I'm coming around on Cousin Oliver that the character itself is annoying, but Robbie Rist, I think, is actually great. Uh-huh. And again, we were watching a couple of season 5 episodes with Cousin Oliver, and we were like, he's great. Like, he actually is a much better actor than some of the other kids, I think. He's like he'd been in some other stuff, but he's like a seasoned comedy actor already. And I think he's fine. It's just they brought him on and kind of stuck him in a thankless role. And they also had what I think is the worst episode of the Brady Bunch is Kelly's Kids was kind of a backdoor pilot with Ken Berry,
right? Where
they brought on Ken Berry, adopted 3, and his wife adopt 3 kids, and
they tried to be socially irrelevant.
Yeah. There was a Caucasian, an African American, and an Asian American that they all kind of wind up adopting, and
then that became a sitcom like 15 years later or something.
Yeah,
in the 80s.
Yeah, I don't know what they were thinking, but they really took over the Brady Bunch with that thing. But the one thing, and one reason I want to mention that is kind of goes back to one thing I want to point out about the Brady Bunch was they're talking about like an ethnically blended family. Mm-hmm. The Ken Berry, the Kelly's Kids. The Brady Bunch kind of started out, the whole premise of it was infamously, there was a movie, Yours, Mine, and Ours, was popular and kind of helped the show become an actual show. But the whole idea was to take a blended family, 3, and combine them. And it seems to me like in the first couple of seasons, they really emphasized that more, especially in the first season. But midway through, eventually, you forget that they weren't all growing up in the same house, which maybe is a testament to the chemistry that they had as a family.
Right.
But also, it seems to me like they really got away from that and really didn't talk about any of those issues. I guess the idea was like, well, it's kind of depressing to get into this angst. So the angst is more about like Jan having 5 kids, not Jan trying to fit in with her stepfather.
Right.
You don't think of them. It's very easy to forget that they're not all biologically related.
Yeah.
In my opinion. I think they really got away from that premise at some point. But a lot of those first season episodes are more like classic, like scenarios that you would think of like, okay, what would happen if they're blending? And then they got away from that pretty quickly, I think.
Luckily, the theme song does remind you of it.
It does, yeah.
I mean, it doesn't say, here's the story of a man whose wife died.
Right.
Or a woman who, I guess, got divorced.
Yeah.
I'm sure, just as with Mary Tyler Moore, they couldn't say that, but I get
They seem to have left it deliberately ambiguous.
Yeah, but it does at least explain the show.
It does.
But you're right. At some point, that doesn't matter. Which maybe 5 years into a family, that would stop mattering.
Right. Well, I would hope so.
Yeah.
I would hope so. But it seems to me like, I guess the point is, let's tell family stories and let's not even worry about it. But I do think it's remarkable in the sense that like the whole premise of the show, quickly became irrelevant. And yeah, maybe it's just because, they all treat each other as equals.
Right.
Which is a good thing.
Yeah. They always solve their problems. So
yeah,
I guess they solved that problem.
I guess they did. Yeah.
Somehow Mike and Carol psychologically manipulated the kids into
the master manipulators.
Yes.
Well, okay, so the big bet.
Yeah.
And I really kind of enjoy this episode because I love the bet.
Yeah.
So I guess we can get into it with the quick summary.
If I remember correctly, Bobby bursts into the house like screaming anyone's name.
Yeah, he's really excited. He's so excited. He's like tearing through on his bike, and I think he almost knocked something. He knocked something over like right in front of the garage, which I'm not really sure what it was, like a soccer goal framework or something.
Right.
He tears in through the family room, and there's something that I noticed on IMDb and then noticed when I was watching this that he sort of he's so quick to close the door behind him. He exposes the fact that there's no glass in the door because the curtain actually sways back through the hole in the door. But yeah, he is. You're right. He's excited because he chinned himself 5 times.
Yeah, which, I had to interpret as chin up, and luckily he later used that. Used the correct term.
Yeah.
Chin up and not just chinned.
Yeah, like slamming himself in the chin like 5 times. Yeah. It took me 5 tries to break my jaw.
And he ends up interrupting Greg, who's trying to make it with a girl.
Yeah, Greg's very nonchalant about it.
Yeah.
He doesn't have time for Bobby. And really, this kind of exposes the age gap here because, Greg's kind of...
He's like 16.
As close as they all are, Greg's got more concerns and Bobby really can't understand that yet. No. And this happens time and again and later in the episode that Bobby just shows a total lack of understanding for Greg's game.
Yeah. But they make this bet.
Yeah.
I mean, it seems like a fair... Well,
Greg actually says, big deal, I could do 2 times as many as you.
Which I hope.
Yeah. So Bobby says, well, why don't we, bets him, $1 million or something like that.
And he bets him a bunch of things like that he doesn't have.
And Bobby says Greg is chicken.
Yeah.
And Greg thinks the bet is unrealistic. The terms, reasonably so. But
right.
Bobby interprets that as Greg being chicken.
Yeah.
And that's one thing you don't want to be, chicken. That's timeless. That's not a relic of the 70s.
Exactly.
I don't want to be chicken, today.
Yeah. Boy, it shows you that Bobby's getting older, too.
Yeah.
Season 1 Bobby, would he accuse someone of being chicken? He might still be too innocent.
Let alone his older brother. He was much more deferential and not quite as versed in schoolyard politics as he seems to be now.
Yeah, so they end up making the bet. Whoever loses will have to do whatever the winner asks for a week.
A whole week, yeah, that's right.
A whole week, yeah.
So what do you think about the terms of that bet? Can you see that? Did you see that possibly going sideways when they made the bet?
Yes.
That's a very expansive bet. Maybe they should have been a little bit more specific about things.
Especially once a tyrant won.
Right.
Yeah.
It's ripe for abuse.
Yes. And at first I thought, this is just going to be between them. And then it turns out the whole family's into it and knows about it.
Yeah.
Betting that's not something that Brady's are necessarily against.
No, I find that remarkable, and the family embraces this and gets enthusiastic about it. And again, this is the kind of thing like it's happened in other episodes where there's been challenges like Battle of the Sexes type challenges. Uh-huh. Boys versus girls or Greg versus Marcia. And Mike and Carol kind of not only condone it, but they get enthusiastic and they serve as kind of like arbiters. Like there's an early episode where I think the boys and girls are fighting over how they get to use like trading stamps or something. Remember those kids, trading stamps? And what they're going to use, what they're going to redeem them for, and they wind up building a house of cards. Uh-huh. And it turns into a big competition. And I don't want to get into it because I hate the resolution of that. Tiger gets involved, and I think it's totally bogus how they resolve it. But
speaking of, did they just boot Tiger from the show at some point?
Well, it's a mystery because the doghouse is still there in that luxurious backyard.
He's just wandering around.
Yeah.
It comes in at night.
But he's never seen, but his house is there.
Yeah, because, I mean, he's a big part of the pilot.
He is, yes.
He looks a lot like the dog from My Three Sons.
Yeah, I'm not sure if there's any relation. That may be an acting dynasty there.
Yeah. I do like that they, in terms of sort of leanness of the show, that they don't ever show Bobby telling people about the bet or Greg, but other people mentioning it to each other like they already know.
Right.
Like, so stuff happened off camera, you know.
Right.
Somebody told somebody, it got around the house pretty quickly.
Yeah. Like,
they didn't bother wasting time with those scenes.
Like Marcia mentions, because she's rooting for Greg.
Yeah.
And she mentions putting up with Cindy and everything, which implies that, you know, it's a thing. And then, but they show Bobby training.
Yes.
In contrast to Greg. And Peter is kind of like right there. So you know that Peter's engaged in it too. Yeah. So there's a good piece of economical storytelling that they managed to combine these kind of things and get you established pretty efficiently.
Now, there's another bet, though, that the B plot, Mike gets an invitation to his 20th high school reunion. Which I sort of did the math there, and it seems like Greg must have been born like right after he finished college.
Makes sense.
Yeah, back then.
Right.
And so he has good memories of all the wacky nicknames people had.
Yeah.
Like
Flathead.
Smasher. Flathead was my favorite.
Yeah. Oh, sorry. Yeah. Didn't mean to reveal.
No, that's fine.
That stood out as my favorite.
Partly
too.
because like my dad would talk about kids growing up, like, and all the nicknames they had for kids were all these like just whatever physical attribute someone had. That, you know, there was someone named Bucket because his head looked like a bucket.
Wow. Okay.
And things like that, or Squirrel.
So you'd get branded pretty early.
So I enjoyed Flathead in particular, and Mike's apparently was Hot Lips.
Yeah.
He was a nurse during the Korean War. But he reveals that he had a crush on a girl named Bobo. And so they make a bet that Carol can figure out. She has 3 guesses to figure out which girl was Bobo. And she thinks she can do it because she knows what Mike likes.
And I like that. I think Mike is the one that actually says, why don't we do the same bet that Greg and Bobby have? Yeah. So they're enjoying that, and they're like, hey, let's turn this bet.
Right.
But there's definitely a different energy between this bet between Mike and Carol.
Yeah.
And I like this B plot because it kind of shows like one of the most interesting things about the Brady Bunch is how like affectionate Mike and Carol are and how just genuinely into each other they are.
Well, you know, that each True Hollywood Story spent so much time on his dissatisfaction on the set. And of course his sexuality, and even that like in more romantic scenes. I mean, not that romantic, but it is a kid's sitcom, but that he would get uncomfortable. And, you know, and Florence Henderson was talking about that she picked up from the start that he was gay, you know, and was able to handle it and get him comfortable and stuff. But it just surprised me because they have, not that he was gay, because I already knew, but because I think they have just their chemistry on screen is great.
I agree. Like, to me, growing up, it was never like, well, they look awkward together. It was, if anything, it was awkward as a viewer just because it's like, oh, gross, you know, grown-ups making out and stuff like that.
Right.
But it seems like genuine affection. And talk about, you know, I think people talk a lot about the Bradys being sort of an ideal family, but one thing that it's easy to forget is the kind of mature, you know, the kind of flirty but healthy relationship that Mike and Carol have. I mean, talk about a model marriage.
Yeah.
I mean, when they go back and forth and like tease each other, there's always this kind of underlying affection for each other. And that's really proven out in this episode.
Yeah. And I think watching these episodes, anytime they were on screen together, I was much more engaged with the show than, you know, the kids.
Yeah, they're excellent performers. And, you know, Florence Henderson was a versatile performer. Robert Reed had been on, you know, The Defenders, which is one of the most acclaimed TV shows of all time.
And dreaming of doing a violent motorcycle film with
yes.
Andy Griffith and William Shatner.
Right.
And Marcia.
So, you know, he was, and famously, yes, he did have his issues.
Yeah.
But I think it's a credit that it doesn't come off on screen.
No.
And by all accounts, he never took it out on the kids.
No, apparently he was really liked them and was kind of a father figure to them.
Yeah. You know, there was a book that came out recently by an author named Kimberly Potts, I believe, about the Brady Bunch. And there's been a lot written about the Brady Bunch. But one thing I think that distinguished her book was she had a good section on Robert Reed and his complicated relationship with the show and kind of put into context other things that were going on and kind of fleshed out how, yes, his behavior made the kids uncomfortable sometimes, but how he treated them with a lot of respect. And just a very, one of the fuller pictures of Robert Reed and kind of the things he was going through and everything that I've ever read. So I would definitely recommend that for people that are more interested in it. And it kind of supplements kind of some of the stuff we've read in like Growing Up Brady. You know, Barry Williams excellent book about the show. So it's worth pointing out. But yeah, I think on the show, Robert Reed and Florence Henderson are great.
And Alice, of course.
Yeah.
And Sam.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, no Sam here.
No Sam the Butcher, and I think Sam the Butcher is one of those characters that you might be amazed to find out how few episodes he was actually in.
Yeah.
Because he's just so famous. But I'm not sure how many episodes he was in offhand, but it's not nearly as many as you might expect.
Right. Well,
I think a lot of times he's mentioned more than he actually is in. Like, he's kind of more of an off-camera presence.
yeah, that makes sense.
Yet he was in some of the most, like the Meat Locker episode. You know, it was Sam's butcher shop where Greg and Bobby get stuck in the frozen meat locker.
I do love a good.
Yes, that's got to be one of the pioneers. Yes, being stuck in a confined space had been around, but as far as a meat locker, I think that might have been a pioneer.
There's a little bit of peril involved there.
Oh yeah, there was. Yes,
that is coming back to me. I don't think that one was on Hulu, or I would have watched that.
Oh, that's a shame. Well, it may start out with I think the opening premise is that Bobby's upset about being short. Or being small.
Wait, is it the one where he gets a Napoleon complex?
I think we might have seen that in this one.
That's how Hulu describes one of the episodes, is he gets a Napoleon complex.
I'll actually say that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I want to mention Bobby's pants in this episode. He's got some serious, I think some striped, some groovy striped pants going on.
Flares.
Yeah, and Greg is wearing, again, I've been watching a lot of these, and it's kind of sticking out like how often they recycle the same outfits over and over again. And Greg's wearing like a purple shirt and kind of like pants that he wears many, many times throughout season 3. So somebody must have liked him.
I mean, that's real.
Yeah.
Right? Kids only have so many sets of clothes.
That's true. And, just to save on laundry time and bills, probably. Maybe he's re-wearing them throughout the week, too.
Yeah, or maybe he's such a laid-back cat that he doesn't care about laundry.
Yeah.
You think, Alice, she might just be washing them all the time.
I think that's probably what's going on.
Yeah.
She's always doing something.
She is.
She earns her money.
Yeah. Do you think Peter's like every now and then just envying Greg's wardrobe, like waiting for when it gets handed down to him?
That's a good question. I'm surprised they never addressed that on the show. I'm trying to think if they ever directly mentioned hand-me-downs as a thing.
Girls borrow each other's clothes and stuff, or at least Jan and Marcia, I guess.
Yeah.
But
well, I wonder that may come into play with shoes and boots, because as we find out in this episode, those kids have a lot of shoes. And they always need polishing or shining, apparently.
Yeah. Yeah, at least. Well, there's that scene. I think it's the scene where Marcia and Greg are commiserating over lame younger siblings.
Yeah.
And he's polishing up like a fancy pair of boots.
Right. He's saying next week Bobby's going to be doing this.
Yeah.
And Greg is great in this, and I really enjoy Barry Williams. I think just on this episode and the show in general, but he's got the right mix of like being smug without being too much of a jerk, but he's just like overconfident. Obviously, he's not training. Kind of around this time, like Bobby actually tries to back out.
Yeah.
Kind of use reverse psychology,
but only because Marcia, right?
Marcia comes up and like pretty much talks smack to him. And
she's like,
Marcia's actually more
like
smug than Greg
in this
is.
Episode. Yeah.
Yeah. Marcia kind of comes up and says, there's no way you're going to win. And then she just like walks off. Right. She just goes in, like talks smack while Bobby's practicing or training, and then walks off with this grin on her face. So then Bobby goes to him, and then Greg has these like little facial expressions. Like he knows what Bobby's trying to do and he doesn't care. He's like, nope, we're going through with it. And I really enjoyed that too.
It's a very tortoise and the hare thing.
Yeah.
And Greg being the hare.
Yeah. He doesn't see any need to practice. Now, I guess we'll get into that, but I'm kind of wondering if it would have really made any difference. I think that's one thing we could do. Would training for a week have really helped?
Apparently it helped Bobby.
Well, plus Bobby's getting protein shakes from Alice, which may have helped. She gives him some kind of like odd blend that she says that she, helped Greg, and Bobby gulps it down even though it looks disgusting.
Yeah.
Maybe there's some kind of performance enhancing thing going on there. Alice is slipping something, some PEDs in that drink.
Maybe it's his mental. Bobby's so psyched up about wanting to do it that
gets like an adrenaline boost. Yeah, it was Bobby. I thought maybe Bobby would have peaked too early, but you're right. It seemed like it sustained him, and he was energized, whereas Greg was so nonchalant that he really couldn't get up for it, and he didn't take it seriously. And he actually falls like, well, should we get into the actual bet or the actual competition?
It is taking a long time to get through.
Yeah.
Very short episode.
Well, the one thing, again, the whole family's there.
Yeah.
Like cheering, people on and stuff, and counting and everything.
I wonder if it. Do you think that scene reveals elements of their different personalities?
The whole family, or Bobby and Greg?
The kids,
Yeah.
especially. Because so Marsha, we know, is on Greg's side. Peter's playing both sides.
Yeah.
And they both know.
Yes.
That was kind of amusing.
And
I don't remember what the other girls.
well, they're actually pretty quiet. Actually, Jan's pretty quiet in this episode.
Yeah.
I think. And Carol actually has like a classic Carol being a mom thing where she's like, "Oh, be careful, Bobby. Don't overdo it. Don't overdo it." He's chinning up on a, like a swing set. Yeah. It's not like he's going to, have an accident like on the Saturday Night Live where, the weightlifter's limbs are removed from his body or something. But it's kind of like in the classic episode where they get a trampoline and everybody's having fun on it, and Carol's like, "Oh, don't get hurt," and so she's kind of doing that classic mom thing. So I think it does. And Mike is trying to be fair, but is serious and totally committed to making sure this is a fair competition, which I respect.
Yeah.
So Bobby does very well. He does 11 chin-ups.
Yeah. So he more than doubles his original count.
Right.
And he thought he would be able to do 7 by the end of the week.
Right.
So that's good.
So Greg would have to do 22. So I guess that's the thing. Like Greg, when he originally said he could do twice as many, he said it casually. He was probably thinking I could do like 15 easily.
Yeah.
And he does 15. We don't see each chin up though, but eventually he gets to 19, and it's not easy. Like by 17, I think we see the last couple, and he's struggling.
Because of the way they shot it, for a lot of it, I was like, well, this isn't fair. His head comes up to the
right.
the swing set, but then they got to a wider shot, and it turned out he had his knees bent.
Yeah, he's doing like a real strong lift. I mean, he's doing like he's pulling himself up from like practically on the AstroTurf.
Yeah. Yeah, he loses. And Bobby, of course, is...
Yeah, he falls several short, which I think was kind of cool. Like, just a little touch, like he didn't get 21 and then just miss it. He was 19 and then he was done. So it's legit. There's nothing you can argue about. And he's got like a stunned look on his face, which is perfect, too. Like kind of a mix of disbelief and like kind of disgust, and a real showcase episode for Barry Williams, I'd say.
Yeah. And then we get like a montage of sort of... Not quite a montage, but a whole bunch of different chores.
Right. He's doing the shoes, of course.
Doing the shoes.
Taking out the trash.
At least once, like, Bobby sends Marsha and Jan as go-betweens.
Yeah. Greg has to drive them to the library.
Oh, that's right.
And Greg's like, "I'm not going to drive you to the library." They're like, "Oh, yeah, you are. Bobby said you have to."
Right.
Like, so Bobby's not only having Greg do things for him, but he's having him be his slave to do things around the house for everybody else.
Right. The last piece of cake.
Yeah. So that goes beyond a chore. Greg goes to get the last piece of cake, and Alice snatches it away from it because Bobby decided he wanted it.
Right. That's the problem with the language of this bet.
Yeah.
Whatever they want.
Bobby's clearly out of control.
Yeah.
But he goes way too far with this next one.
Oh, yeah.
Greg's got a date with Rachel.
Yes.
That happening groovy chick that he was talking to earlier in the episode.
In the cafeteria.
Yeah. Yeah, that's right.
That's very
They go into detail about that. Greg clarifies. He knows all the details of it, doesn't
How
he?
big is the school they go to?
Yeah.
Because one of the other episodes I watched, he's like, "Yeah, we met yesterday at school." I'm like,
Yeah.
I mean, I guess.
Wouldn't you know them already?
Know who people are usually, but maybe they thousands of students.
It's not like a college campus where you'd be like, "Oh yeah, I saw you in the Commons yesterday."
Yeah.
They're going to go to a drive-in movie. It's going to be swell. It's a Western and a science fiction movie and a Western.
Right.
And Bobby, I like it too because when he's talking about this, Bobby's like nodding his head like, "Oh yeah, it sounds good to me." While Greg's confirming this date on the phone, Bobby's like nodding along like, "Oh, sounds good." Bobby's way out of control here.
Yes.
So Bobby wants to go, and he establishes that, and Bobby reminds him of the bet. And what I like, too, is that they go yelling to Mike and Carol right away, and they're kind of talking at the same time, and Greg's emphatic.
Not on a date.
Dates are different. Yeah. Not dates. And Mike has to remind him, hey, the language they used.
Right.
So what do you think about this? Like, this would have been an opportunity to cut some of this off, Mike. What do you think about, and Carol, I think, agrees with Mike. There's no conflict there, but she's kind of deferring to it's really Mike's decision. Mike could have put an end to this right now. Yeah. What do you think about his decision not to?
I don't know, because I don't know what they're trying to teach the kids here. Like some of the other episodes is clear what their manipulation is about. Like the when Peter broke the vase, they're like, okay, well, all the kids confess but him, so we know Peter probably did it. But we're going to get him to admit to doing it by making him feel guilty.
Yeah.
And then he'll learn a lesson that he should have just told us. And this, even when at the end, when they spell out the lesson, it's It's a little vague. It seems to be, though, that they're more wanting to teach Greg right now.
Yes.
If you make a bet or if you agree to something, essentially, if you sign a contract.
Yeah. A verbal contract.
Yes, then you have to fulfill the
A
contract.
family bet is as good as a contract in this household. And I think it's a personal responsibility thing. And yes, I agree that Mike wants Greg to live up to it and be mindful of things, which I don't think Greg really learns this lesson is that the show later episodes in the show reveal. But I guess that's the point. So
Yeah. And they do acknowledge to each other that this is going to be a disaster, right?
yeah, I think they realize that yeah, it's totally inappropriate.
Yeah.
And Greg even says, fine, then I won't go and I'll cancel. I'll tell Rachel it's off. And Bobby's like, I don't mind if she comes along.
Right.
That's fine with me.
Yeah, he's more about the movie.
Yeah, and it's funny, too. And then, well, Greg says there's no way it's going to happen. And, of course, because it's a sitcom, he says there's no way that Bobby's coming along on this date. And, of course, we cut to the date, and they're on the drive-thru, and Bobby's in the backseat. Right.
So Rachel, I looked up the actresses in IMDb. It took a little bit.
Yeah.
Because she's not listed in IMDb under this name. The name said Hope Sherwood, which raised an eyebrow.
Yes.
So it turns out she's Sherwood Schwartz's daughter.
Yeah.
And she's married to guitar player Lawrence Juber.
Yes, very interesting.
Who played in some version of Wings and has done all sorts of things. And I've seen him in concert. And in fact, not knowing it, but I saw him at the Fest for Beatles fans at his table, and she was with him.
Wow.
I didn't know who she was.
Ah, nice.
So I think she handed me a guitar pick.
Nice.
Yeah.
Very cool.
So that was kind of fun to learn.
That's very cool.
Yeah.
And she was actually in several episodes, playing several different characters. And she was in an early episode, in a slumber party episode. And this actual character returns in a later episode, and they make reference to this scenario.
Continuity.
Yeah. It's amazing, isn't it? Yeah.
Yeah. Some other, the one where Alice and Sam don't get married. And Carol's like showing a photo album of their honeymoon. I'm like, as if Alice wasn't on the honeymoon.
Yeah.
Which, if you watched that episode, she was. So.
Right. Yeah.
It's like, don't you remember?
Yeah.
So I'm impressed that there was any continuity.
Yes. Any sitcom to do that. And it's amazing. And you have to wonder if it was a different actress that wasn't related to the executive producer, if they would have bothered to bring back the same character.
Well, and again, the E! True Hollywood Story, she said that a lot of stories on the show came from her, like, coming home from school.
Hope said that. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Oh.
Yeah.
So
she wasn't really thrilled about that.
They're taken from reality.
And Lloyd Schwartz,
yes,
son of Sherwood Schwartz, and producer and director and all sorts of things. And he kind of said similar things, like that people make fun of the show. Say, parents didn't act like this, and mine did.
Yeah. Lloyd Schwartz has an interesting role in the Brady Bunch mythology. He's kind of like the caretaker of the legacy, and I think there might be some disagreement on how critical he was to the show. He seems to have, I don't want to imply anything, but he also seems to remind people of how important he was to the show, and I don't know. I think a lot of times he's the only source that indicates that, because he gradually went up through the show, but it does seem like he was responsible for working with the kids a lot and kind of wrangling them. So he was very important as far as that goes.
He told a story about sort of realizing that Barry Williams was into Maureen McCormick, and pulling him aside,
yeah,
saying, "Just get her to introduce you to her friends instead."
Yeah,
and it worked because I guess he didn't want that showing up on camera.
Yeah, that makes sense. Well, and there's no love lost between Lloyd Schwartz and Robert Reed. Yeah. It seems like he seemed particularly angry. Like the Schwartzes were the ones most directly dealing with Robert Reed, but Lloyd Schwartz, I think, really thinks that it had a negative effect on his dad's well-being. So that's a shame.
Yeah.
But Hope Schwartz, a.k.a. Hope Sherwood, yeah, she was in several episodes, and kind of cool to see her. And she's surprisingly tolerant of Bobby's antics, I think, once they actually go on the date.
Yeah, although she seemed like when Bobby sends Greg off to get food and he's trying to talk to her, she's like kind of like turning her nose up at him.
Very standoffish.
Yeah.
Well, I guess I say surprisingly tolerant because I'm surprised she doesn't just say, let's just go home.
Right, yeah.
Because I certainly wouldn't blame her if she did that. Because Bobby starts out kind of just being, you could almost think, okay, he just doesn't know any better. And then it becomes clear after he's making all these demands that he's just being a jerk.
Yeah.
Like he wants popcorn, he asked for pizza.
Which, that didn't look like a pizza to me.
No, that was maybe a microwave pizza.
Yeah, I mean, besides, he said it was pepperoni and onion.
Interesting combination.
Yeah. Honestly, it looked like just like a big piece of pepperoni.
Yeah, it did.
Maybe it was a crust with tomato sauce and cheese and onions and then one piece of pepperoni on it.
Yeah. Drive-in cinema may not be the ideal place to get gourmet cuisine, but even so, that looked like a pretty weak effort by that drive-in.
I think my second favorite thing, at some point he said something like, I'm missing all the action or something. He used the word missing, and Greg's like, we know what we're missing.
Yeah, exactly. Greg's stewing up in the front while Bobby's, kind of being a nuisance, and then Bobby wants to get up front, and she just, Rachel pretty much says, you might as well. Yeah. She just basically gives up.
Right. And then, he wants to put the top down.
Yeah, that's why, I think why.
So Greg's doing that, and people are honking horns.
Yep.
And then Bobby opens an umbrella.
Which is totally ridiculous, because it might rain, he says. Yeah. The only way this makes sense is if Bobby's just totally unhinged and being a jerk.
Yeah.
Because there's no reason for him to put up an umbrella other than it's going to cause this thing. So it seems like a very contrived thing. But if you kind of look at it like just Bobby just doing what he can to drive Greg crazy, then it kind of makes sense.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know why. Why does he want to drive Greg crazy at this point?
I don't know. He's already got what
it's just he's Power Man.
He is, yeah. It's like the satisfaction of winning isn't enough. He's got it. And Greg wasn't nearly, he was a little condescending. His dismissiveness is way low on the scale compared to Bobby's, abuse of power. It's Bobby's way over the top. It's not like Greg was constantly talking trash to him.
Right.
He just wasn't taking it as seriously.
And he got, at this point, he's fed up.
Yeah.
But he should be.
Right.
And then, because it might rain, Greg's like, I'll just put the top back up.
Yeah.
But the umbrella's still open. Pokes a hole through the roof. That was a good bit of physical comedy. So I guess that was my favorite thing in the scene.
Yeah.
Was the physical comedy, because it ends up stuck through the roof and open.
Yeah.
Outside the roof. And
Bobby's it's almost like he's trying to saw through the top with the umbrella. Like he's just so frantically moving it back and forth, trying. It's really bizarre. I'm not sure what he's trying to accomplish actually.
Right. Yeah.
But then it hits home.
At first, maybe he's just poking it and he's trying to get it.
Yeah, maybe it won't close. I guess he's trying to. It's almost like he was trying to poke it all the way through. I don't know, but it doesn't work. It makes it worse, I think. Yeah. And so apparently, this is like the Brady's not as often as seen like Mike's car, because you got the family station wagon, and then you got this car apparently with the convertible.
Yeah. So
they got to go home and tell Mike and Carol what's going on, and Mike's not too happy about it.
Not really.
It's going to take $150, Greg figures, to fix that roof.
Yeah.
So Bobby offers to pay for it, and
they're figuring to replace the whole roof, too.
Yeah.
It seems a little extreme.
Well, Mike probably loves this car, and maybe he wants a whole roof rather than getting some cheap-looking patch.
Yeah.
Yeah,
it could be.
Maybe that's what it is, but Greg knows cars, so I trust his judgment on that one.
And then they ask, Bobby's like, well, what is it? He'll do Greg's chores for $1 a week.
Yeah, Greg apparently already mentioned this.
Yeah.
So it's interesting. I'd love to have known that conversation on the way home after they dropped off Rachel. Probably while Rachel was still in the car. She's got to listen to those two arguing about this. So great date for her. But yeah, Bobby says he'll do, $1 a week. He'll do his chores.
Yeah. And Carol's like, it'll take 3 years.
Yeah.
By then, Greg won't even be at home.
Yeah.
Probably.
I would think, yeah. Be pretty close, yeah. So Mike says they'll talk about the financial arrangements later, but he hopes that Bobby at least learns something. And like you said, it's totally turned from Bobby is totally at fault for this. Yeah. Even though it's a little questionable judgment of Greg, I think, too, to actually close the roof without knowing it was clear.
That was a bad decision.
But they're totally blaming Bobby for this.
Yeah. And
Bobby is to his credit, he realizes he says, I guess I was what you might call a little stinker.
Yeah, and Greg's a big stinker.
Yeah. Again, that's almost as bad as being chicken. Stinker versus chicken, I don't know. So that gets resolved, but we still have the B plot.
There are 3 lessons that Bobby says he learned.
Yes, and this is the big kicker.
But I don't remember what that.
Well, it was don't be mean to somebody if you win a bet or somebody, don't be mean to them.
Yeah, there was another one, and then the last one's a joke.
Yeah, if you go to a drive-in movie in a convertible, don't bring an umbrella.
Right. Yeah.
And Greg actually seems to find that amusing, and as they fade out, Greg's kind of got this smirk on his face, and he kind of looks over at Mike and tries to stop smiling.
Yeah. And then at the end, we get the resolution of the other bet.
Yes.
Mike and Carol bet.
Yeah. So Carol actually wins the bet.
Yeah.
And
she lists 3 things. 1, she knows what he likes.
Mm-hmm.
2, she knows what he doesn't like. And 3, Bobo came over and introduced himself.
Yes. Yeah. So it was Irene Hofflepuffer or something like that.
Yeah.
And Mike is a stunned that she figured that out. So they're in their bed, their single, or their bed that they share together, I should would add.
Progressive.
And Carol's, teasing Mike a little bit and making him get up and get her book, get a tissue, and then finally she's got one more thing.
Good night kiss.
Yeah.
And maybe something else.
Yeah. I think it's definitely implied that there's going to be something else. And Mike is kind of like, even Mike is like, well, do I have to? And he's good-natured about it. He kind of realizes, that they're going through the motions. And he sees it as a sign of flirtation, the whole thing. As opposed to Bobby and Greg, Bobby's act of revenge and abuse of power. This resolution is kind of a means to a different end.
Yeah. Now, again, this is based on episode descriptions. I don't think Bobby learned anything because in season 4 or 5, there's an episode where the description is Peter saves Bobby's life. Bobby makes him his slave.
Yes.
So,
right. Yeah. And there's another episode a later episode where Greg gets grounded and he sort of, he can't use the family car. So he winds up using a friend's car to go get tickets to a concert. And Mike's upset because he thinks he broke the terms of the grounding. And Greg says, no, your exact words were that, that I was grounded. You didn't mention anything about using a friend's car. So they agree, again, and this is typical, this Brady fashion amped up a little bit. They agree to go by exact words.
Yeah.
So then stuff keeps happening in the episode, and Mike says, was that your exact words, Greg? And Greg's like, yeah, I guess so. So Greg has to live by his exact words. So you'd think Greg would have been very careful about the consequences of something like that. And I think that's the actual episode where he winds up having another date with Rachel ruined because of this, where frogs get involved.
Oh, boy.
There's a frog jumping competition going on.
Oh, sure.
Bobby and Peter have frogs that they're training for a frog jumping competition.
That sounds familiar. And sure, I believe that.
Yeah.
They're in California. It's where the frog jumping competitions happen.
Yeah, people go from all over the globe. Yeah. So that's the big bet.
Yeah, I don't know what I was going to say.
Were you going to say how this episode kind of turned you around on the series, and you're going to watch a lot more of these now?
Not quite, no.
Okay.
But it clearly, I enjoyed it more than I thought I would, other than some of the visual things I mentioned. But, and I think, of course, the kids get better as it goes. I mean, like the pilot, I don't think any of them is particularly good at that.
Yeah.
And it's like the adults are so engaging in that one.
Yeah.
That the kids is just a distraction, especially at the end where their wedding just becomes chaos.
Yeah.
But I think any kind of like family sitcom like this, that's sort of how it works, right? You put some good solid adults with these kids and hope they ground it a little bit. And as an adult, even though I'm not a parent, I much more would rather watch. I would watch a show about just Mike and Carol.
Right.
I would watch a show about Alice and Sam if those existed.
Yeah.
Either of those I would watch right now, probably.
Yeah.
More likely than wanting to watch a lot of episodes of this right now.
Yeah. Ann B. Davis was brought on to be kind of the straight-up comedian.
Yeah.
And to have like another adult.
So, right, Joyce Bulifant was originally cast Carol, but they wanted Florence Anderson, and at the last minute she came in.
Right. And then they realized that I guess they wanted another...
Funny?
Right.
Or... The narration, this is my only source, the E! True Hollywood Story, but said she wasn't as naturally funny as Joyce Bulifant.
Yeah, which is...
So they got Ann B. Davis, replaced some other woman, so that there would be someone who's...
Yeah, Ann B. Davis was like a classic, an experienced sitcom actress, and her acting is totally sitcom, doing the wisecracks and the self-deprecation throughout the whole run. That you can see she did exactly what they wanted her to do.
Yeah.
I think... This is a good episode because of the Bradys bonding together, the notion of a family activity, which so many episodes center on, and just how enthusiastic and sincere everybody is about embracing the bet and enjoying it and kind of living up to the terms of it. So that's one reason I thought this was a good episode to talk about.
So from memory and from these episodes that I watched, I feel like, I have a handle on Greg. That he's trying to be cool.
Yeah.
He's vaguely cool, but, that there's a little bit of a... I'm not going to say Han Solo, but, that he's a little bit of bravado that maybe he's not quite as cool as he is.
Maybe a little bit of Bravo, you might say. Johnny Bravo. He becomes Johnny Bravo in a later episode. And
his alter ego.
Yeah, I'm sorry to interrupt you, but I think I kind of perceive him as he's supposed to be cool, kind of. Like he's got some issues, but on the other hand, he is an athlete. He's kind of a jock. He's on the football team. He seems to do pretty well with girls.
Okay. So in the world of the show, he is cool.
I think so, especially, Peter and Jan, the middle kids, often have problems. Peter seems to have the biggest problems of all of them.
So I didn't get a good gauge of his character.
Peter? Yeah.
Yeah. Like Jan, okay, I got a grip of her now that she's insecure about that.
Yeah.
About being an only child. or not being an only child, being a middle child, and having Marcia as her sister and all of that, and then Cindy, all I can tell is she's adorable.
Yeah, well, and I guess one of her things was Susan Olsen resented the fact that I think they basically, her stance is that they told her to play younger, kind of kept her in hairstyles that she didn't like, and had that lisp and everything that they played up, and she resented it. She didn't get a chance to grow, and she really didn't. I think like later as the show went on, Bobby and Cindy became, a lot of times they were just foils for the other ones, and their big thing was like, okay, they like to eat a lot of junk food. So they'd like go to an amusement park, and their thing is trying to eat as much junk food as they can or something. And
yeah, that's not much to do.
Yeah, no.
My impression of Bobby is clear, is that he's a nice kid with a raging egomaniac inside.
Yes.
Just waiting for his episode where it comes out.
Yeah, I think that's fair to say.
And Marcia's, I guess, like the pilot, she says something about being very, I forget what the word is, but sort of like officious or being on top of things.
Yeah, Marcia, it seems like at junior high, she's like the most popular and strong overachiever. And then there's one episode where she's transitioning to high school and she has troubles trying to fit in and find her like spot. But after that, you just get the impression like, yeah, she's just pretty much one of the popular kids and doesn't have a whole lot of problems. Or her problems are like
getting Davy Jones.
Yeah, or like crushes on older men like her dentist or Davy Jones or
yeah.
So, but no,
her dentist. What?
Yes, let's not go there. But one thing I do want to mention, since you kind of remind me of something, is unlike some other family sitcoms, I think this is one where it's notable because Mike and Carol, Robert Reed and Florence Henderson, don't become overshadowed by the kids. As say, I guess Family Ties would be the classic example, where the kids totally kind of outshine the parents, or even like I think Growing Pains, where originally maybe the show is set up for one thing, and then the kids kind of really take over. Yeah. And this one, even when the kids take over like a lot of the plots, the parents are still strong presences in helping drive the plots and everything. So I think the Mike and Carol remained strong characters all the way up to the end of the show.
Yeah, it seemed like they always had a side story.
Yeah.
I'm sure some of that is, just economical. Mm-hmm. Like, well, there's a bunch of stuff we can shoot while the kids aren't around.
Yeah.
Because they can't be here all the time.
Exactly. Yeah.
So let's just do that.
I think a lot of times with the kids, maybe there'd be like 4 or 5 of them would be more prominent. And maybe on a given episode, you'd have one of them. And maybe in this one, like Jan, I don't know, if you maybe get a couple of speaking lines, but not as much going on.
Yeah, I think Jan or Cindy really did.
Yeah. Yeah.
Or Peter didn't do all that much, except for when he was playing both sides.
Yeah. Yeah. But there's 117 episodes of this, and I think over the show's run, each of them had spotlight episodes, and they did a pretty good job overall of spreading things out, but and giving Alice some spotlight episodes too. I mean, Mike and Carol wouldn't focus on them as much, except there's one horrible episode where, in a rare dual role, Robert Reed plays his grandfather, and Carol, or Florence Henderson, plays her grandmother, and they...
Oh, where the kids are trying to set...
Yes. That's awful. Oh. That's painful. Oh. But maybe they liked it.
Maybe they got to stretch out a little bit.
Yeah.
Maybe Robert Reed had seen one of those My Three Sons episodes.
Maybe, yeah. Where you get that?
Or he played Fergus.
Uncle Fergus, or yeah. And Robert Reed directed some episodes later.
Yeah.
One thing I'm finding interesting as I was watching these shows is seeing like technically the show wasn't necessarily as rote as I maybe thought. And watching the HGTV special series about recreating the house kind of reminds you of, okay, this camera angle. But there was a little bit more things like, it's always interesting to me to see like a new camera angle or see like, ooh, there's actually like a spot there that they don't usually show, or like a different camera angle. I think in the Robert Reed episode, I don't know if this is intentional, but you see a couple of things, and like towards the 4th and 5th season, you see more of the upstairs and like the hallway with the kids' bedrooms and stuff. And I don't know, I get a kick out of that, but it's not necessarily, I mean, let's face it, it's a sitcom and they had their certain camera angles and everything, but
right.
Every now and then they do some different things. It wasn't totally, by the book every episode. So
yeah,
definitely a formula to the show though. And
so one of the things though that I laughed at the most was in the Peter the Vase episode, was when the kids were doing chores and someone was mowing the AstroTurf.
Oh yeah, you like that? Huh? Yeah. Well, you got to keep that looking sharp.
AstroTurf has a mind of its own.
Yeah. They had a pretty nice backyard, though. Beautiful, bright AstroTurf swing set.
The first time in one of these episodes where I saw the garage, I was like,
yeah,
whoa, it's more a carport, but
it's a huge space that they don't always or ever use the cars for.
One of the elopement episode, Bobby was like practicing organ out there. He had like an electric organ they had sent home from school.
Yeah, well, he tried to learn the drums one time and was playing out there too.
So when do they, because at some point on the show they performed a little bit.
Yeah.
I know they did it in real life, but.
Right.
So when does that happen? Or maybe those episodes weren't on Hulu because of.
Music, it could be.
Yeah.
I think there's a season 4. There's the one episode where they go on amateur night, and then there's an episode where they're the Silver Platters, where they're trying to. Well, actually, there's 2. There's one where Peter's voice changes, is when they're recording a song, and they have to incorporate Peter's voice cracking. It's time to change. And then there's another episode where they go on amateur night because this is another Brady thing where they spend money on a silver platter for their parents' anniversary, like this really big gift, and have it engraved. But Jan doesn't realize that the engraving is way more than she thought, so they have to try to go on amateur night to win enough money to pay for the engraving. And then there's the Johnny Bravo episode where they're apparently on another amateur show or a TV show when an agent sees Greg and tries to turn him into a musician because he fits the suit that they had.
Right. Okay. Yeah.
So I think there's probably a good 3 or 4 episodes where you actually see them as a musical act, but they never seem to break out of amateur status.
That's good.
Yeah, probably.
That would be too much. Except for, of course, when they had their variety show.
Yeah, well, they keep trying to revive the show. They had the variety show, the infamous variety show. They had the Brady Brides. They brought the Brady something, actually called the Bradys, where the...
Sort of dramedy.
Yeah, the dramedy where they tried to bring angst into it. They had the TV movies.
Yeah.
So they tried many times, and interestingly, again, people didn't seem to want that version of the Brady Bunch. They wanted the old version because those the TV movies did very well. The first, I think, the Christmas movie was the one that inspired the Brady something thing. But the series, they always flopped.
Right. I don't think I watched the Bradys, but I think I watched the movie that led, because I know I saw at least one of the things Martha Quinn was in.
Yeah, like a very Brady Christmas.
And Bobby's wife.
Yeah.
And I know Maureen McCormick wasn't in those.
Yeah. There was another thing about some of these projects was they couldn't bring everybody back at the same time. There was always somebody, at least one going on, so it was rare. And then, at some point, Robert Reed was the first one to pass away, and then you couldn't have Mike in there anymore. So
right, at this point, it would just be the kids. And I'd be happy to see those actors, if they wanted to act, do stuff. Mm-hmm. I don't know if I want to see them as Brady's again.
Yeah.
Do I want to see Greg as a 60-year-old or what?
It's tough. Well, I think this HGTV thing was a good use of them because it's them revisiting this specific show, but not kind of playing off that.
Were all
the kids were, yes, all the kids, which was notable. I think they settled some feuds and they probably all made a lot of money on it. So
yeah, well,
and they got some spin-off shows from it too.
There you go, like individually.
Yeah, I think Maureen McCormick got a show, and Eve Plum I think got some kind of show. So they had a couple of spin-offs.
She seems like had a pretty regular acting career. Eve Plum.
Yeah,
a lot of guest roles and things.
She might have had. I mean, she was in a very notable TV movie.
Yeah.
And may have had arguably the best of the non-Brady careers of all of them. Yeah. The kids, anyway.
She seemed, the adult her of 1999 seemed very practical, too.
Yeah.
Like that, when they did the Brady Brides or whatever that, she's basically, well, they offered me a lot of money.
Yeah.
So, sure.
Although I think overall Barry Williams has probably been the best at leveraging the Brady Bunch and having a sustained career, with all his music, and he had a long run in Branson. Oh. And there may have been times where he wrote, Growing Up Brady, which is probably one of the most popular celebrity bios of all time, was a very popular book. Yeah. So he seems to have, maybe there's been a couple times maybe where he tried to get away from the Bradys, but eventually he embraced it and makes a lot of money and seems to have a pretty happy life.
And he seems to have a good attitude about it all.
Yeah.
A sense of humor about it.
Right.
And of course Christopher Knight had his brief return to stardom in reality.
Reality TV, yes. Yeah. Yes. And Susan Olsen, she got into radio and she wrote a book about the Brady Bunch, co-wrote a book about the Brady Bunch variety show. So.
Oh boy.
But this was probably, the peak for many of them, understandably. And it's an enduring series that, nobody's ever going to forget, it seems like. Whether you like it or not, right. You're not going to be able to forget it. You can't escape it.
Yeah. Again, I apologize to anyone if I came on too harsh at the beginning of this.
Well, I was worried that you were going to be a real drip, real Squaresville at the beginning. But you turned out to be pretty neat.
Ah, swell.
We could probably talk for hours about the Brady Bunch. But
sadly, yeah.
Instead, maybe we should just wait and do another. Maybe we should do this again next season. What do you say, Mike? Another Brady Bunch episode.
Should we do an episode based on each era of hair?
Well, we could definitely do that.
With Cheers, we're going to do the Diane years and the Rebecca years, but there's not the only dividing lines in the Brady Bunch are hair.
We could definitely do it that way.
Yeah.
Well, how about this? What do you think?
I know once we watched a episode of the Variety Hour together.
Oh, yes.
And it was terrible.
That could definitely be a show in and of itself.
Yeah, I
That
there's something worthwhile.
Yes. How about this? What do you think if we make a bet and the loser has to do whatever the winner suggests as episodes for a whole year?
A whole year? A whole season?
Well, year season. We could do that.
Because a year would be...
Possibly, yes.
That's a lot.
Yeah.
I'll have to think about it. I guess it would depend on what we were betting on, too.
Well, yeah, what we actually do. Yeah. It does sound to me a little bit like your little chicken, though, Mike.
Maybe I am.
Oh.
Maybe I'm comfortable with that.
It's a different era these days. Yeah. It's a different era these days. Maybe it's for the better.
It sounds to me like you're trying to be a stinker.
Oh, well, I certainly don't want that. I don't know if there's as much stigma about being a chicken, but I think there's still a lot of stigma about being a stinker. Okay, I might have to rethink this.
What about a creep? Did they ever call people creeps?
I think
it's a big Leave It to Beaver thing.
I think that's more of a, creepy that's definitely a big Leave It to Beaver thing. My Three Sons, maybe a creep.
Yeah.
You could see that.
Well, as long as I don't call you a milk drinker.
No.
That's the ultimate insult.
On My Three Sons it is, yes.
Yeah.
On the Brady Bunch, probably family would be like, hey, yeah, we love milk.
Yeah. That's great.
It gives Alice an excuse to go to the store every single day to keep us in milk, so nothing wrong with that.
She always hides an extra quart of milk in the back of the refrigerator.
Yeah, just in case.
Just in case, someone drinks the last quart.
Exactly.
She's got one there for Jan. She's got stuff stashed everywhere.
She's the best.
Okay, well, I think that's how we talked about the Brady Bunch.
This episode brought to you by AstroTurf Grow. When you want a perfect, hassle-free lawn year-round, but still want to give your kids chores to teach them about life or some nonsense, AstroTurf Grow. This episode also brought to you by the Davy Jones Fan Club, because that's a thing people remember from the Brady Bunch. This episode also brought to you by Sam the Butcher. He has the... Hang on. Our lawyers tell us we can only say he has meats, but he is the butcher, so take that, Arby's. Join us next time for another exciting episode of Battle of the Network Shows. Learn more, leave feedback, and suggest future episodes at battleofthenetworkshows.com. Follow us on Twitter at BatNetShows, and like our Facebook page, facebook.com/Battle of the Network Shows.